President, we have a national emergency.
This is one of the things that we can shoot first and ask questions later. Normally you can't do that.
All of a sudden these trees started moving out of the way. They parted for me. And then I came out into this opening, and there where I saw Jesus Christ.
Back in 1927, an American socialist, Norman Thomas, 6 times candidate for president on the Socialist Party ticket, said the American people would never vote for socialism. But he said under the name of liberalism, the American people will adopt every fragment of the socialist program. He is more imminent. James Madison, in 1788, speaking to the Virginia Convention, said, "Since the general civilization of mankind, I believe there are more instances of the abridgment of the freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachment of those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations." When men were free.
Broadcasting live from a secret location buried deep below the earth, you're about to make a connection to the signs of the times. W. Dean Shook is live on the air right now.
This is End Time News, and I'm your humbled host, W. Dean Shook. We have got a fantastic show for you today. Truth in the news really comes to life today. Let me start off by welcoming all of our listeners across our regular broadcast stations across this country, everyone on the Blog Talk Radio Network, the Spreaker Radio Network, and everyone on iHeartRadio. We appreciate all of you so very much. You're the lifeblood of this program. Without you, we wouldn't exist. So thank you. And, you know, just by being here, you're proving you're a little bit smarter than everyone else. So thank you for being here. You know, I've always thought that we were a nation of laws, that everybody has to obey the law. Everyone follows the same laws. Well, in today's program, we're going to start with a contradiction from that. However, a little later in the program, I have got a report on Benghazi. Now, you know, the narrative that the mainstream media has been giving us on Benghazi has never really made much sense. You know, and that's kind of what happens when you're lied to. You know, the lies just kind of contradict each other sometimes. They don't make a lot of sense. And it's kind of the wrong word going in the right ear that you say, hey, something's not right with that. This whole thing with Benghazi has always been that. It's always been something is not right here. Well, let me tell you what I've done. I've taken some investigations that were done by different people and sort of melded them together to come up with an explanation that really makes a lot of sense. Now, I have no solid proof, but I'm going to give you these investigations in a way that kind of puts them in order and really comes up with a plausible explanation. So stay tuned for that. But first, I want to start with our illegal invasion across what used to be our southern border. This is an exclusive from Breitbart News. California DMV is ordered to overlook identity theft by illegals. Now get this. Illegal aliens may enjoy a free pass on identity theft due to a new investigative policy at California's DMV. The policy, which was issued last year and effective as of January 1st, 2015, it directs DMV investigators to overlook identity theft by applicants who may have attempted to obtain or been issued a license or ID card previously through submission of false information. A DMV source, who asked to remain anonymous, provided Breitbart News exclusively with a copy of this newly enacted internal policy memorandum. The document informs DMV investigative officers that past identity theft is acceptable when the illegally acquired IDs were only used to obtain a driver's license or where the license or ID was not used to commit any other crime. It's unclear how investigators are meant to determine whether a falsely obtained driver's license or ID was used solely for driving or also to commit other crimes, such as using fraudulently obtained driver's license to open a bank account, or to apply for a loan, or buy alcohol. The policy seems to expect the applicants to admit voluntarily to using a fraudulent driver's license or ID for purposes other than driving a motor vehicle, if they did so. Typically, Identity theft is prosecuted as a felony in California. The new DMV policy may be an attempt to protect illegal aliens from prosecution and conviction for a felony that could lead to their deportation. And it would disqualify them from President Barack Obama's new executive amnesty policy. Now, the source told Breitbart News, "My belief is that this policy came from the governor's office." The source added that a naturalized or natural-born U.S. citizen who attempted to obtain a driver's license fraudulently would not receive the same consideration, would be prosecuted as a criminal. Now, a spokesman for DMV told Breitbart that the agency can't prove if someone completely lied on their identity the first time. They said the DMV is constantly searching for inconsistent information, and it turns relative cases over to the district attorney's office for prosecution. "There's a chance we could miss someone," she said. But they assured Breitbart News that investigators are continually looking for cases of identity theft. Yeah, sure they are. Well, here's one from Washington AP. Now get this. The Obama administration has ordered immigration agents to ask immigrants that they encounter living in the country illegally whether they might qualify under President Barack Obama's plan to avoid deporting them. According to internal training manuals obtained by the Associated Press, agents have also been told to review government files to identify any jailed immigrants they might be able to release under the program. The directives from the Homeland Security Department mark an unusual change for the immigration enforcement, placing the obligation of the government for identifying immigrants who might qualify for lenient treatment. Now, previously, it was the responsibility of immigrants or their lawyers to assess whether they might qualify under the rules that could keep them out of jail and inside the U.S. The training materials supplied to agents for Customs and Border Protection and Immigrations and Custom Enforcement, they instruct agents to immediately begin identifying persons in their custody as well as newly encountered persons who may be eligible for protection from deportation. One training document includes a scenario describing encounters between agents and immigrants with guidance about how agents should proceed. It has a checklist of questions to determine whether immigrants might qualify under the president's plan. ICE officials earlier began releasing immigrants who qualified for leniency from federal immigration jails. A spokesman for Customs and Borders Protection, Carlos Diaz, said immigrants caught crossing the border illegally remain a top priority for the agency. The training documents for border agents, he said, provide clear guidance and immigration enforcement operation so that both time and resources are allocated appropriately. I want to be brutally honest here. I don't think the majority of Americans are willing to fight for anything. They see their liberties, their rights, their freedoms being taken away in a systematic way. The education system has become an indoctrination system. They're training our youth to be what someone else wants them to be. Our financial system and taxes are out of control. They're being manipulated by a powerful few for their own gain at the expense of the people. Yet Americans seems to be happy to let someone else try to figure it out because they're too busy. They're watching sports or buying new cars to keep up with the Joneses, and yeah, they're worried about their health care, but just assume all they can do is find an approved doctor, pay a little bit higher rate, and it's okay as long as they get their kids to soccer practice on time, have time to go for a jog or work out at the gym, make sure they get their pedicure on time. People seem more worried about how big their house is or how nice their car is or whether or not they're wearing the latest fashions. However, there are Americans who see light at the end of the tunnel. And it seems that there's more and more people who are starting to see that light. But what they're seeing is not good. The State of the Union, my friends, is not good. Those of us who are in the light need to show the rest that when you're in the light, you can see things more clearly. You see there's no time to step out of the way of this oncoming freight train or get ran over. Truth is, the train's closer than we think, and the time to move is now. I want you to grab your friends and relatives by the hand. Help them to get out of the way of this train that's about to run us over. Get involved. We need to hold people to account. Our politicians, our courts, our state and city leaders, and most of all, ourselves. We need a higher level of integrity and honesty and a sense of doing the right thing, not just for others, but also for ourselves, to lead by example. to be willing to stand out from the rest, to let people know you're not willing to go along to get along. Because if nothing else, we can say we did the right thing even when others weren't willing to. And you'll be able to hold your head high. Tell your kids and your grandkids that you did everything you could to preserve our way of life, our freedoms, our liberties, even in the face of all-out war. Freedom is not free. It never has been. It never will be. Is your freedom worth fighting for? You know, if we have to follow the laws of this country, then why do people get to come into this country illegally and then get another pass on our laws while we are held to full account? My friends, are we going to allow this? Right after this break, I've got a couple stories here. The Benghazi story is coming up, but before that, I want to show some hypocrisy and some revenge coming out of our government against Israel that's really unprecedented. I think this is a dirty little stinky trick. Stay tuned. I'll tell you all about this when I come back.
Do you think the media is biased? Maybe they're leaving something out, or there's something they're not telling you. Now, you have a source for the truth in the news. W. Dean Shook, End Time News. Your connection to the signs of the times.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. These are the stakes. We either stand up to supporters of terrorism, or we and our allies risk losing the freedom we cherish. We must not let the jihadist government of Iran get a nuclear bomb. President Obama has had opportunity to stop them, but he's failing. Join with us, and let's secure America now.
You know, seems these days that not a single one of us steps on a train, boards an airplane, attends a concert or a sporting event and doesn't have at least a fleeting concern that terror could strike. The reality of the post 9/11 world is that we're at war and we are a target. We all live with some level of uncertainty and fear. It's easy to lose sight of an issue that defines our generation, the need to stop terrorism in our time. Our president apologizes for America, and he's made it clear that the era of American exceptionalism is over. He campaigned on closing Guantanamo and trying terrorists in civilian court. On his second day in office, he stopped enhanced interrogation and he closed down the black sites. You know, where we got the intel that ultimately led us to bin Laden. He has all but abandoned Israel despite the fact that Iran is the world's leading sponsor of terror, that openly calls for the annihilation of Israel. All while Iran develops a nuclear bomb that they recently announced could be delivered to U.S. targets via missiles developed during Obama's presidency. While he does nothing but talk. The question for every American is simply, are we safer? AreWeSafer.com provides you with the facts and the potential consequences of these failed policies so that you can make informed decisions. I mean, let's face it. If things don't change, everything will change. And we all hope that day never comes.
Hi folks, have you noticed the federal government and police departments are using drones for everything? Drones are expensive. They're hard to fly. It can take up to a week just to learn to make a drone hover. Not anymore. There's a new generation of drones that are not only affordable but very easy to fly. Now you can have your own personal drone, anything from a micro mini that'll fit in the palm of your hand, right up to a full-scale model, 10 inches in diameter like the model I have, the V949 Pro. Comes with a 6-axis 4-rotor blade and an HD 2.4 camera mounted on the bottom. These drones are made of a space-age polymer. They're durable. And don't worry about crashing your drone. Replacement blades for this drone from the website are only $1.80 for a pack of 4. That's right, I said $1.80 for a pack of 4 replacement blades. You can also get an extra long life battery. This battery allows you up to a half hour of fly time with a maximum speed of 40 miles an hour. Have your own personal drone, and you can get all of this for under $70. If you go to the website, wdeanshook.com, and click on the banner on the webpage, you can get from 7 to 22% off your personal drone. It's shipped as a kit. You can be up and flying your own personal drone with an HD camera within a half hour. Come to the webpage, wdeanshook.com. Click on that banner and get your discount today. wdeanshook.com. All right, thank you for allowing me that break. I appreciate it so very much. All right, now I want to tell you about a story of revenge. And this is revenge on a large scale. Now, I'm going to tell you this story that most of you probably already know, but it's going to increase into the flow of this whole story. So bear with me while I'll tell you something that most of you probably already know about Netanyahu, who the White House says spit in our face. Okay, here's what they said. The White House outrage over Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu planned to speak before Congress in March. It's a move he failed to coordinate with the administration. He began to seep through the diplomatic cracks on Friday, with officials telling Haaretz that Israel's leader had spat in President Obama's face. They said, "We thought we'd seen everything." The newspaper quoted an unnamed senior U.S. official as saying, "But Bibi managed to surprise us even on this." They went on to say, "There's things you simply don't do. He spat in our face publicly. That's no way to behave." Netanyahu ought to remember that President Obama has a year and a half left to his presidency. "And there will be a price," he said. That's the quote to remember. There will be a price. The White House said Thursday that Obama would not meet with Netanyahu when he travels to Washington, with the spokesman citing a long-standing practice and principle by which the president does not meet with heads of state or candidates in close proximity to their elections because they don't want to influence the elections. Kerry will also not meet with Mr. Netanyahu. Now, I want you to remember that, because here's the price to pay. It's revenge, and all bets are off. Here's what's being reported. The Obama army deploys to Tel Aviv to topple Netanyahu. Here's the price to pay for what Obama has called a spit in the face. Tel Aviv, a consulting firm almost entirely composed of former staffers of President Obama's re-election campaign, has been hired to run an election effort in Israel aimed at defeating Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The conservative blogosphere is reporting Jeremy Bird, a national field director of Obama's 2012 campaign, is now working for a new nonprofit group called V15 that's running an effort to defeat Netanyahu in the upcoming election. A closer look at Bird's consulting firm, as well as its working relationship with the Israeli group, finds he's just one of scores of former senior Obama election campaign staffers working on the anti-Netanyahu effort. The left-leaning Haaretz Daily in Israel reported V15 is trying to replace Israel's government and cause nothing less than an electoral upset. Haaretz reported Roy Arad writes that he directly asked V15 former Nimrod Dweck whether his group's goal was anyone but Bibi, referring to Netanyahu by his popular nickname. Dweck replied, "We say replace the government. It's not directed at specific individuals. There have been many years of right-wing governments during which little happened. It's time for a change of course to give people hope." Well, V15, or Victory 2015, is backed by U.S.-UK group called One Voice, whose official Tel Aviv office is adjacent to those of V15. One Voice bills itself as an international grassroots movement that amplifies the voice of mainstream Israelis and Palestinians. It has a clearly leftist tone. One Voice put out a press release Tuesday that was decidedly anti-Netanyahu. They said, "We believe it's critical that the majority of Israelis who are concerned about the numerous security and socioeconomic changes we face have their voices heard in the next election. This came by One Voice Israeli's executive director, Polly Bronstein. We need a prime minister and a government who will be responsive to the people. The release announced the One Voice Israel at V15 are working with premier grassroots consulting from 270 strategies to leverage the most cutting-edge mobilization techniques. 270 Strategies is led by Bird, who is described in the Haaretz articles as V15's secret campaign weapon. And this from a president who claims to not want to meet with Yahoo because he doesn't want to influence the election. And this is just the tip of the icebergs of the lies and the deception from our government officials. All right, let's talk about Benghazi. When I put all these investigations side by side and started looking at them, there's a pretty clear picture that came from this. Judicial Watch has obtained some smoking gun documents about Benghazi. Documents obtained Monday through a federal court order show State Department officials disseminated the false story that the 2012 Benghazi attack that killed U.S. Ambassador, nothing more than a violent escalation of a demonstration by Muslims against an insulting video, even though they knew it was a coordinated military-style attack. Now, I know most everybody already knows this. However, I want to retell this story because it really dovetails into the investigations that have been done since then. So among the documents obtained by the Washington-based government watchdog Judicial Watch was a memo sent the day after September 11, 2012 attack to the U.S. Embassy in Tunis by the State Department's Diplomatic Security Command Center titled Emergency Message to U.S. Citizens, Demonstrations. Well, the Diplomatic Security Command Center, or the DSCC, was well aware the attack was carried out by a highly organized and armed Islamic militia, because the DSCC was a unit that mentioned the attack in real time via video transmissions from a drone. The message is identical to the emergency message issued by the U.S. Embassy in Tunis and archived on the embassy's website. The emergency message reads in the first paragraph, "On September 11, 2012, violent demonstrations took place at the U.S. Embassy in Cairo, Egypt, and at the U.S. compound in Benghazi, Libya, resulting in damage in both locations and casualties in Benghazi. Media reports indicate that demonstrations may be placed at the U.S. Embassy in Tunis on Wednesday, September 12th. You see, so they knew in advance. Judicial Watch President Tom Fenton says the DSCC clearly knew in real time that a full-fledged terrorist attack was taking place on September 11th at the compound in Benghazi, and that the American people deserve to be told the truth. We're now into the fourth year of a massive Obama administration cover-up, Fenton said. He said the DSCC communiques may further help unravel the Obama administration growing web of deceit. He said, I've always believed that the Benghazi cover-up was about two presidential campaigns, the Obama re-election effort and the Hillary Clinton presidential campaign. I have little doubt that the State Department is protecting Hillary Clinton with this latest cover-up, he asserted. Even after the Benghazi attack, the Obama re-election campaign maintained its narrative that al-Qaeda was on the run. The boast would have been impossible to sustain had the State Department told the truth about the terrorist attack in documents like the emergency warning for U.S. citizens. Now, Judicial Watch insists that testimony from the Secretary of State Charlene Lamb under oath to the House Oversight Committee on October 10, 2012, proves that the State Department Security Command Center knew the Benghazi compound was under hostile fire from the moment the attack began. That brings us to the events of September 11 itself. Lamb testified, "The account I'm about to present is based on first-hand reports from several security personnel present that night. Additionally, I was in our Diplomatic Security Command Center monitoring multiple open lines with our agents for much of the attack." She went on to say, "The attack began at approximately 9:40 p.m. local time." Lamb continued, "Diplomatic security agents inside the compound heard loud voices outside the walls, followed by gunfire and an explosion. Dozens of attackers then launched a full-scale assault that was unprecedented in size and intensity. They forced their way through the pedestrian gate. They used diesel fuel to set fire to the Libyan 17th February Brigade members' barracks, then proceeded toward the main building. The Judicial Watch statement claimed Lamb's testimony was in direct conflict with the initial false claims by the Obama administration. The attack rose from a spontaneous demonstration in response to an internet video. False information and the lies put out by this office, the State Department Diplomatic Security Command Center, that knew, even as the Benghazi attacks were going on, that it was a terrorist attack, recklessly endangering U.S. lives by drafting for the U.S. Embassy in Tunisia, claims the Benghazi attacks involved only a protest demonstration over a movie. Now, when the State Department only warned U.S. citizens in Tunisia about demonstrations, the U.S. government was lying to them. Okay, so there's no real news in that. We pretty much knew all of this stuff. These are the basics that we already knew. What could the truth possibly be that makes sense of all of this? Well, there's a lawsuit that seeks documentation into a very interesting theory that does make sense. And that is that Benghazi was part of an Obama plot to free the blind sheik. Let me tell you how this goes. Here's the question. Did the Obama administration plan to allow a U.S. ambassador to be kidnapped to set up a prisoner exchange scenario that would provide a pretext to releasing this blind sheik, who's imprisoned for plotting the 1993 World Trade Center bombing? Now, this is one of the possible explanations that the administration's puzzling actions before, during, and after the Benghazi attack that has promoted an investigation by watchdog group Judicial Watch. Now, they said Tuesday they're taking legal steps to force government disclosure of documents pertaining to plans the Obama administration has to release this blind sheik, Omar Abdel Rahman. Now, James Ace Lyons, who's a former four-star general who served as a commander-in-chief of the U.S. Pacific Fleet and a founding member of the Citizens Commission on Benghazi, has proposed that the attack was on Obama administration was orchestrated kidnapping attempt that went terribly wrong. He continues to speculate the Obama administration wanted to give al-Qaeda-affiliated rebels operating in conjunction with the Libyan Muslim Brotherhood an opportunity to kidnap Stevens and exchange him for the blind sheik. Why else would all legitimate requests for increased security be denied? Why would you withdraw legitimate security assets in that country? Lyons was asked in an interview with WND, why would you order Stevens' personal security guards to store their weapons in a separate room in the complex on the day of the attack? This is pure dereliction of duty. Here's a clip of General Lyons in that interview.
What happened was a terrible mistake on the Ansar al-Sharia terrorist group. I speculate that Ambassador Stevens was supposed to be kidnapped, held hostage in exchange for the release of the blind sheikh that is we're currently holding in prison. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. Otherwise, he never would have stayed there that night.
And do you believe, then, that he was doing so voluntarily, willingly, knowingly, being put forward, if you will, as is trading chattel for the blind sheikh?
Well, that's what's going to have to come out in the hearings. And the only way we're going to get to the bottom of it, we probably have to have a special prosecutor, and we certainly have to have General Petraeus testifying openly and with granted immunity.
Very quickly, we're out of time, Admiral, and as always, it's fascinating listening to your mind work. The president today said on the night of the attack his orders were to his national security team to do whatever is necessary to save American lives. Your reaction?
Well, that didn't happen. Very quickly, we didn't use the resources we had in theater. You had that 130-man Marine Force recon team in Sigonella. They weren't used. F-16 aircraft, which could have been there in an hour and a half. We had the Pentagon timeline that said that they stood up 2 Marine counter-terrorist teams at Rota, but the first team took 23 hours to go 800 miles to get to Tripoli. I can go around the world in 23 hours. The second team was never sent because they said all the Americans were out of the consulate. That makes no sense. We let it open for looters. It should have been secured. This is U.S. territory. That prevented the FBI from getting in there for over 3 weeks. And when the FBI did get there, they did a lousy job by leaving half the documents and that were left there sprued around.
Judicial Watch explained that in 2012, his organization sent Freedom of Information Act to the State Department and the Justice Department to obtain documents about the possibility that the blind sheik might be released. Fenton got nowhere. Last year, he said, Judicial Watch received extraordinary information in response to a Freedom of Information Act request on the Benghazi attack. The information indicated that the State Department had a concern as the attack was occurring that it was a kidnapping attempt and that the State Department thought that Ambassador Stevens was alive and in a local hospital. If you remember, in the case of Bo Bergdahl, who was exchanged for 5 top Taliban commanders at Gitmo, really opened a Pandora's box, suggesting the nightmare type of prisoner swaps the Obama administration would be willing to make with terrorists. Now, you know, this whole Bergdahl thing. If you'll remember, when this all happened, I reported that documents and testimony from affiliates in al-Qaeda said that Bergdahl was being held in Pakistan by the Haqqani Network. And for those of you who don't know who the Haqqani Network is, they're a group of terrorists who kidnap journalists and foreign citizens and hold them for ransom. They also hold ships. You know, these are the guys that go out there in the ocean and take over these ships and hold the ships for ransom. That's how they make their money. They've been known to hold people for years until someone pays a ransom for them or they just kill them. But they don't release them without something being paid. So sources say the Haqqani Network was paid something for Bergdahl, and the Haqqani Network released him to al-Qaeda. Maybe the release to al-Qaeda was part of the deal with the people who paid Haqqani. Al-Qaeda then used him to swap for the 5 terrorists at Gitmo, because these 5 were what's being called the worst of the worst, top al-Qaeda leaders. This would also explain why the White House will not release the documents about the Bergdahl case without redacting large parts of it. And for those of you who don't know what redacting is, this is where the people who have the documents go through it with a Sharpie and black out the parts they don't want anyone to see. That's redacting. The military first reported that Bergdahl was to be prosecuted for desertion a couple weeks ago. Then 2 days later, they said there would be no charges. Was this because the Obama administration stepped in and said no? Because the whole idea was in the first place to facilitate the swap for the 5 worst of the worst at Guantanamo? Now investigators are asking for the documents about Benghazi. The White House is only releasing part of them, and the ones they're releasing have been heavily redacted. Why? What are they hiding? So was this part of a prisoner swap for this blind sheik? We all know that Obama has always had sympathies for the Muslim Brotherhood. His half-brother is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. And I'm not just saying that, it's been reported over and over as fact. Now, we know that Obama has Muslim Brotherhood connections in his cabinet, as does Hillary Clinton. Her top advisor is the daughter of the woman who founded the female side of the Muslim Brotherhood. One of the Muslim female leaders was Salih Mohammed Abedin, the mother of Clinton's top advisor, Mahmoud Abedin. Salih Mohammed Abedin is a professor and dean at Dar el-Hakama College in Saudi Arabia, has been heavily involved in organizations tied to terrorism. And with the rise of Huma Abedin, the top advisor for Hillary Clinton, most of the information on her mother, Salih, has been effectively cleansed. So when the Muslim Brotherhood asked Obama to free Abd el-Rahman, this is the blind sheik, Obama knew he couldn't just release him. Looks like he came up with this elaborate plot for a prisoner swap, the same as he did with Bergdahl. And what does that say about our U.S. government, who would risk an American diplomat, and this was a big risk, to comply with his Muslim Brotherhood request? It makes me ask the question, where does the president's loyalties really lie? With the country that he's supposed to be the leader of, or his loyalty to his Muslim Brotherhood connection? Now, I'm just putting the information out there. You decide for yourself. And you can email me at contact@wdeanshook.com. I'd love to hear from you. So let's move on. How would you like to hear about what we have now is a state-run media? Indiana Governor Mike Pence is to launch a state-run news site. According to Breitbart, the International Star is reporting that potential 2016 presidential hopeful Governor Mike Pence plans to launch a state-run news site that will offer pre-written articles to Indiana news outlets, as well as sometimes break news stories about his administration. According to the report, Pence's government news site, scheduled to start in late February, will be called Just In. It'll feature stories written by state press secretaries. Former Indianapolis Star reporter Bill McCleary is reportedly overseeing the media site, along with governance board composed of communication directors and an additional board consisting of McCleary and Pence communication staff. Lovely. An information sheet reportedly distributed last week to communication directors for Indiana state agencies read, "At times, Just In will break news, publishing information ahead of any other news outlets. Strategies for determining how and when to give priority to such exclusive coverage remain under discussion." Referring to the media site as the Pence News Service, the Star reports the documents about Just In say stories will range from straightforward news to lighter features, including personality profiles. Can't wait for that. The taxpayer cost for the state-run news effort is unclear, of course, says the Star, but a Pence spokeswoman said on Monday the more details would be available soon. Thus far, state employees' salary data reported indicates Just In has 2 employees with a combined salary of nearly $100,000. The state news site hopes to target smaller news organizations with a smaller staff. "I think it's a hilarious idea," said Jack Ronald, publisher of the Portland Commercial Review, a small newspaper. "I have no problem with public information services. The Purdue University Agriculture Extension Service does a great job. But the notion of elected officials presenting material that will inevitably be a pro-administration point of view is antithetical to the idea of an independent press." John Strauss, a longtime Indiana journalist, said that he was not surprised by the thought the government's attempting to maneuver around independent media. The real story, he said, is they're leapfrogging all the mainstream media people. Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate all of you so very much. And as usual, you can email me at contact@wdeanshook.com. The webpage is wdeanshook.com. Join me on Twitter, that's WDeanShook. Facebook is WDeanShook. And as usual, when the dust settles and the smoke clears, I'll be back with more truth in the news. I'll see you then.
You can get these full stories and more at WDeanShook.com. That's WDeanShook.com.